So I have been wanting to start this vlog for several days now and still have not until this moment. So I'm finally going to start it. I don't know how long it's going to go for. Probably just the rest of this week and then into next week. It is currently Wednesday the 10th of August and I am just going to do a nice little chill reading vlog. I do have a few life events and just activities and stuff going on in the next week and a half or so. So I think it's a good time to do this because I have a little more to talk about rather than just work and general life stuff. But we'll get into those things in a moment. First, I'm going to tell you what I've been reading. So I have been working my way through The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. I am currently 190 pages into it and my edition is 545 pages. So I'm like a third-ish, maybe a little over a third of the way through. And like I said, I'm really liking it. I wasn't sure what to expect beyond the basic premise. And it's also been years since I read The Woman in White, so I really didn't remember much about Wilkie Collins' writing style. I read The Woman in White a little bit early on in my Victorian reading, so I wasn't totally sure about this, but I am absolutely loving it. The characters are fabulous. We're starting off in the perspective of the butler, which is just a fascinating perspective to take in this story. I don't know for sure that we'll be getting other perspectives, but based on some of the things I've seen as I was tabbing it up, breaking it up for my reading throughout the month, I noticed a few things that made me think that maybe I'm going to be getting a few different perspectives, so we'll see how that goes. But right now we're in the butler's head and it's just very interesting to be in his perspective. Like I said, for this story, he just has a really interesting insight into a lot of the characters that I'm really appreciating. I also can see some reflections of the future Sherlock Holmes that ended up being created after this book was released. And of course, that's fun to see. I also am finding, a lot of the characters to be very fascinating. I just hit a very dramatic moment in the story as well. And I just feel like there's a lot of plot threads that have mysteries involved that I'm very curious to see how they all end up connecting. So yes, that is going very well. And I'm reading about 20-21 pages a day. In that is how I've broken it up. So I did read my 20 pages for today, just barely, and like I said, ended very dramatically, and I'm excited to see how it continues, so I'll keep you updated on that throughout this next week or so. The other book I'm currently working on physically is Elektra by Jennifer Saint. I'm actually halfway through, and I actually want to see if I can finish it by the end of today. It is only like 7-ish, I think. Yes, so I have a few hours before I will, of course, go to bed. I do have a bit of gospel study that I wanted to do, but it shouldn't take me very long, and then I may end up eating something at some point. I had a pretty late, like, dinner lunch situation, so I'm not super hungry, but I'm sure in the next hour or so I will be hungry enough to at least have some like popcorn or something, so I'll probably take a break for that. But I only have about 140 pages left of this, which I think is very doable to be able to read tonight if I just spend pretty much the rest of the evening doing that. So yes, we'll see how that goes, but I'm really loving this, which I'm so happy about. This is by the same author as Ariadne, and I unfortunately was disappointed by Ariadne. I don't think I disliked it as much as some people did, but it was disappointing to me. I had hoped for more. There were things that did bother me about it. This one, while the characters are driving me a little bit crazy, it's not in a bad way. I just think this story, it's focusing on, of course, Elektra, but also Clytemnestra, her mother, and Cassandra, the seer. And if you know anything about their story in Greek mythology, you know that there's a lot of tragedy involved, a lot of difficult things going on in their lives. So this exploring that sort of story, of course, the characters are going to be morally gray and do things that frustrate you and make decisions that maybe aren't the best. So that's to be expected, and I just feel like it's being explored very well. So I'm really liking this, especially compared to Ariadne, which is making me very happy. Sorry, I kept having you drift to the side. I'm holding it with my hand as usual, and I just am not very good at holding it properly. So anyway, additionally, I did want to mention the audiobook I'm listening to. It's When Women Ruled the World by, I can't remember who it's by, but here is the cover of it so you can see. This is a nonfiction about several queens of Egypt or female kings of Egypt, a little bit of both. Ancient Egypt specifically, of course. And it's very interesting. Unfortunately, I do have some issues with it. the author kind of is spending a lot of time discussing her personal political beliefs, and it just gets a little obnoxious to me because I'm reading this, listening to this, wanting to learn about ancient Egypt and some of the queens slash female kings of ancient Egypt. That's what I'm reading it for. I don't care what your political opinions are. I don't need you to preach to me about your idea of feminism and your belief in it. And it just is a little unfortunate when, you know, this book is meant to teach about ancient Egypt, but I feel like a lot of it is just focusing on her explaining her political opinions using ancient Egyptian things and events and people as examples of what she's trying to talk about, as opposed to her talking about ancient Egypt and then connecting it, like in the introduction or conclusion, to current day issues. I just feel like, yeah, it's a little annoying to me. So I'm kind of excited to be done with it, but I am learning enough and interested enough in the history that is being discussed that I do want to finish. And her writing style, I mean, is engaging enough, so that's helpful as well. But yeah, I've been a little disappointed with that, but I'll still finish it. I think it's on 2x speed. It was originally on like 1.7 speed, but like I said, it was bothering me, so I decided to speed it up so I could get through it a little faster. And I think I have about like 45-ish minutes left to listen to, so I should finish that, if not tomorrow, then in the next couple of days for sure. And yeah, that's where I'm at with my reading. I guess I will mention some things that are going to be going on in this vlog. Hopefully I'll get footage of all of these things, at least on some level. First of all, tomorrow night we're actually seeing Singing in the Rain on stage with my family, and that will be amazing. I'm super excited for that. I've never seen Singing in the Rain, the film or the stage musical, and I just feel very remiss about that. I know some of the songs, of course, and I know some of the general idea behind it, but I really don't know much, even about the plot, honestly. So I'm very excited to see that. My sister is very excited. She's a dancer, and so she is really excited about Singing in the Rain, and she's the one who asked my mom if we could possibly go see it when we found out it was playing nearby. So we'll be doing that, and then on Friday evening I'm going with my mom and sister to see Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, the film, because I've heard that's super cute and a good girls' night activity, so we're going to be seeing that. Very excited for that. Saturday, my family is watching my cousin's children, who are super young. They have 2 newborn baby twins, and then they have 2 other children who are pretty young, and so I was going to go visit them, so I may get some footage of that just because they're so cute. And so I don't have to work, I have to work later in the day, but not in the morning when they'll be there, so I'm going to go see them and hold some babies. So maybe I'll get footage of that, we'll see. And then next week, the biggest thing for this vlog is my brother, who has been on a religious mission for the past 2 years, is coming home. And that is so, so exciting. It has been 2 years since I've seen him in person. And yeah, so we'll be able to see him, and I will film some experiences with that, of course, as well. Also next week, I probably won't film anything for this because it's not really something to film for, but I am officially moving into a full-time position at my job, which is super exciting. So you'll be able to see my first week as a full-time worker and see how exhausted I am. Hopefully I'll be able to get some reading in still, because the hours are such that I think I should be able to do it just fine. But it will be different. I will be working about 10 hours more than I've been working the past little while throughout the week. So yeah, it will be a little bit different. I guess it's more like with my second job, I have been working a little more than 30 hours some weeks. So it's maybe like 8 hours additional, even 7 hours, depending on how you calculate it out and just how my weeks go. So yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes. And yeah, that's everything that's going on in this vlog. Excited to take you along with me, and I will see you in my next clip. I may have a montage before that, depending on when I get motivated to do another clip like this, but we'll just see how it goes. Hey guys, so it's currently Friday the 19th of August, and I'm going to quickly just let you know that I don't know what's going on with the shadows on my eyes, but it looks like I have like raccoon eyes, and I keep rubbing at it to see if it's makeup, but it's not going away, so I think it's just the shadow of this lighting. So anyway, that's just happening, I guess. But I did want to do a brief little update and then a little book haul because I did order some things off of Thrift Books, as well as get a couple books at my local used bookstore, which is a story I'll get into in a moment. Really, I wanted to get into this because, as you can see behind me, all my shelves are cleared off because I am moving. I think I've mentioned that already in this vlog, maybe not. But I decided to get my books moved first just because it was going to be the easiest, and it was an area of my life that it was okay if I got rid of a lot of them throughout the past month, as it's not like I'm going to be reading all of them. So anyway, I wanted to get this haul filmed so that I can put these books in a box and have them ready to send off to my parents. So of course, we'll start with the classics. We'll start with my Thrift Books haul, and then we'll get into my other couple of books from my local used bookstore. This first book I got because the author is someone who has come up on my Thrift Books recommendations list a few times. It looks like she's a classic historical fiction writer, possibly specifically historical romance writer. So I was kind of intrigued when I saw her name pop up a few times, and this is one that just really piqued my interest, and that is My Theodosia by Anya Seton. This is, as the title suggests, about Theodosia, the daughter of Aaron Burr, which I thought was really fascinating, being a lover of Hamilton. The only other thing I know about this is that it follows her romance with someone. I'm not sure who. I'm not sure if it's her actual husband from history or if it's some other figure. I'll have to look into it, but I am very curious, and every time I read this title, I just think of the song Dear Theodosia, so, you know, kind of fun in that way as well, I guess. So yes, got this. The other one I'm interested in by her is called Catherine, which I believe is about Lady Catherine. I can't even remember what time period she was in. I want to say she was connected with Richard II in some way, maybe? I'm not totally sure, but anyway, that one also seems interesting, so if I enjoy this, I'll pick up more by her for sure. Next, I ended up picking up a bind-up of Quicksand and Passing by Nella Larsen. I've really been interested in Passing for a while, as I've seen it a lot on BookTube, and Quicksand is her other big novel. I don't think she wrote any other novels besides these two. Maybe she did, and I just am unaware of the others. But these have both been on my radar for a while, so I decided to just pick up this bind-up, and it was in a pretty good edition and had a pretty good quality. So I decided to pick it up on this round of purchases from Thrift Books. I don't know what Quicksand's about, I'm not going to lie, but I know Passing is about a Black woman who is passing as a white woman in the 1920s, I believe. And she runs into a friend from her past. In fact, I think it's actually from the friend's perspective, who is Black and is living her life as a Black woman. And of course, yes, she comes across this friend who is passing as white, and she's married to a very racist husband. So it sounds very fascinating. I've heard really good things about it, and I'm excited to be able to read both of these. I was surprised by how short this was, considering it's two novels in one. I can't imagine having just one of them. I mean, I'm sure if you got the right edition, it would have notes and stuff, but yeah, apparently it's pretty short. In fact, Passing is less than half of it. This part is Passing and this part is Quicksand. So anyway, excited to read both of those. Then I gave into the discussion of this, the consistent discussion of this by Jennifer Brooks and Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and I ended up getting Demian by Hermann Hesse. I've never read Hermann Hesse, but I've been very curious. In fact, while I was on my trip to the Shakespeare Festival in the used bookstore down there, there was another Hermann Hesse book. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it looked really interesting. I was super excited about it. The cover had one of those old covers where it said, you know, $2.95. So even though it didn't have a price tag from the store on the cover, I figured it couldn't be that much because it was originally only $2.95. Well, apparently it must have been some sort of collector's edition or something, because it ended up being $30. So I did not get that book, and I was kind of sad about it. So I decided in this round of purchases from Thrift Books, I would pick this up. All I really know about this is is that it follows a man named Emile, I believe, yes, who makes friends with this very interesting man named Demian, which is spelled this way, which is similar to demon, and I'm pretty sure it's a pretty philosophical work. So very curious to see how it goes. I don't really know what to expect, but I know Jennifer Brooks, it's one of her favorites of the year, and I know Christy Lewis, I don't know if she considers it a favorite of the year, but I know she really loved it as well. So between the two of them, they sort of convinced me to pick this up, and hopefully maybe I'll end up having a new classics author on my list. It's interesting because I feel like Jennifer Brooks and I have pretty similar feelings about a lot of more recently published books, especially historical fiction, but I feel like we have a lot of differing opinions when it comes to classics. So I really don't know how I'll feel about this one, but I do. Hermann Hesse is one that I've heard of before, and I've kind of had him on my radar, so I figured I may as well just give this a shot since it's receiving glowing reviews on BookTube. Yeah, we'll just see how it goes. Although I will say, I don't know what this copy was thinking, but this text looks freaking awful to read. Look how small it is, and it covers so much of the page. I mean, ultimately it's only 89 pages, so at least it's not like super long as far as page count, but I'm sure a normal copy of this would be at least like 180 pages instead of what this is, because I think most of these pages would have been split into two in a normal copy. So anyway, then I did get two classics, one fiction and one non-fiction. So the fiction work I got was The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. I've heard great things about Emma Donoghue as a writer, never read anything by her, but this one I believe is about a woman who hears about a person, I believe a girl, who claims that she has not eaten in over a year and she's still alive, and so I want to say she's a journalist, goes to meet her. I think it's set in the 1850s, excuse me. And Katie from Books and Things has really raved about it, so I decided finally, after all this time of hearing her talk about it and having my curiosity piqued, I would at least try it, see if I like this author, plus this cover is gorgeous, so you know, all the pros for that. So yes, we'll see when I get to this and if I end up enjoying this. I really hope I do. Like I said, I've heard good things about Emma Donoghue, and I don't really have a lot, at least not recently, of authors, contemporary authors that have really stood out to me. So I'm hoping that starts to change a little bit more, and maybe Emma Donoghue will just really work for me. Maybe she won't, but we will give her a shot. And the final book I got from Thrift Books was The Mythology of Richard III by John Ashdown-Hill. I have wanted this for a long time. I believe it's out of print, and it basically is just following a lot of myths surrounding Richard III and discussing some of the more historical facts surrounding some of those experiences. It sort of reminded me of The Creation of Anne Boleyn by Susan Bordeaux, which is about how the public perspective of Anne Boleyn has changed over time due to media and other sources that have just portrayed her in certain ways. And while this isn't quite that, it has a similar feel to that, and I really enjoyed that book. So I'm very excited to see how this goes, and hopefully it will be good. I know John Ashdown-Hill has written quite a bit about Richard III and the Wars of the Roses, so I'm curious to see if he's one that I'll enjoy his style, or if maybe I don't. So anyway, we'll see how this goes. I haven't heard anybody talk about this at all. I just found it at one point, and it's just really piqued my interest, so I ended up getting it finally after all this time having it on my wish list. Okay, and then like I mentioned, I did get a couple of books from my local used bookstore. I honestly wouldn't have, but what happened was that I ended up with a bunch of books that I'm getting rid of. As I packed them up, I kind of started going through some of the ones I wanted to unhaul. So I decided to take them all to this used bookstore for credit, but when I got there, there was a sign on the door that said they were not accepting donations or books for credit at that moment because they were getting a new inventory system and trying to work that out, which is totally understandable, but it just meant that I was now stuck with these books. Also, I went in and asked to make sure, and she said yes, that's the case, but then me and my siblings ended up hanging out for a bit because my brother had to use a restroom and all this stuff, and I just felt bad just like leaving because they weren't gonna take my donation, so I decided to get at least a couple books just to show my support for the local used bookstore. I did leave them at my parents' just to minimize how many books I was needing to bring back over there. So I'll just put some pictures right here. The first book I ended up getting was Grave Mercy, I believe is what it's called, by I believe Robin LaFevers, but here is the cover, so you can fact check me if you want. But anyway, this is a book that's a YA book following assassin nuns. That's all I really know, but it's been on my radar for a while. I don't really have any YA books on my TBR right now because I just don't really find myself drawn to those as much, but this is one that has been on my TBR for a while. I haven't removed it after all this time, and so when I saw it in pretty good condition, I decided to just pick it up. It was only like $5. And then the other one I got was The Idylls of the King and Other Poems by Tennyson, and this is one that I've just had my eye on for a while, and they had a pretty decent copy of it, so I decided to just pick it up and yeah, use that to show my support for the independent store. And yeah, that is all I got. So I'm going to close out this clip here because it's a little bit long, and I do want to do one more with a more solid reading update, hopefully. I will briefly mention that I am still working on the Moonstone. I'm a little over halfway through and really loving it. It's been so good, and I'm excited to see where it all ends up going. I've really liked the character dynamics in that book a lot, and it's kind of surprised me how much I've liked it, so that's been great. I also have been working on Haunting of Hill House. I'm a little over halfway through that as well, and I really want to finish it in the next couple of days. We'll see. I have already had some nightmares because of it, so you know, great. And of course it's night now, and once I finish this clip I'm going to be reading it. So stupid, but it's just the only time I really have to read it because I try to prioritize the Moonstone because I'm reading a certain amount of pages a day. I've also been working on editing my test blog, which should be up by the time you're seeing this, and that's just taking so much time. Plus my brother, as you would have seen, came home from his mission, and that's obviously taken up a lot of time. I also started a full-time job this week, which is great and exciting, but it's just making it so I'm more limited on time, and I'm still getting used to that. So anyway, all that to say, I'm reading this at night, which is probably dumb, but I'm enjoying it a lot. I do have some comments to make on the characters and some confusion I've had, but I will do that I think in the next clip because like I said, this one's gotten kind of long. So we'll stop here and I will update you at least one more time before we finish this vlog out. Hey guys, so I wanted to do this really quick little clip just to let you know this vlog is actually gonna go longer than I expected it to. I just decided I did not want to worry about booktube the week that I'm preparing to move, so I'm just going to vlog my moving process, and then I'll put it together next week and you'll be able to see it then. I did finish Haunting of Hill House and really ended up enjoying it. I'll give you more thoughts on that a little later on. And then I also am working on the Moonstone still and really enjoying that as well. And in replacement of Haunting of Hill House, I started A Rose for the Crown by Anne Easter Smith. This is a chunky Richard III romance, and I'm just so here for it. I've already just fallen in love with the writing style, so hopefully this ends up being a good comfort read during this ever-changing period of time. I also finished my audiobook of Agnes Grey by Anne Brontë. I don't know if I mentioned I was listening to that, but I did finish it and really enjoyed it. I think at this point I might even say that Wuthering Heights is actually my favorite Brontë novel. It wasn't before because I love Agnes Grey, and I still do, but having reread them in pretty close succession, I think I do like Wuthering Heights a little bit better, but I'm still not sure where Tenant of Wildfell Hall actually lands. I'm going to listen to that next just because it's been a long time since I've listened to either of those, read either of those, so I wanted to do that so I have a better idea of my ranking of Brontë novels just because. So anyway, like I said, I'll give you a more solid reading update later and you'll get some footage of me moving and it will be great. So yes, we'll just go into that now. Hey guys, so changed my mind. I know I said I was going to go right into a moving montage, but I just have so many thoughts on what I've been reading that I just need to vocalize them. So I'm going to do that instead. I also completely forgot to film myself packing all my clothes earlier today, so I guess I can show you maybe. There's my empty closet, and yeah, a lot of work's been done. So yes, I have done a lot of packing, but I forgot to film myself doing it, but I still have a bit more, so I will do my best to remember that as I finish off this week and move completely out. But like I said, I have a lot of thoughts on what I've been reading, so I just need to come on here and talk about it. But like I said, I have a lot of thoughts on what I've been reading that I want to share with you. So first of all, going back to Agnes Grey, I said in my last clip that I finished that on audiobook, and I must say I do think I like Wuthering Heights better. I think it's just a better book, but I do love Agnes Grey. Honestly, having started Tenant of Wildfell Hall as well, these three Brontë novels probably could switch around as my favorites depending on the day and what mood I'm in, to be totally frank. But Agnes Grey just went so well. I will say, I remember this from the first time I read it, and the second time it was a similar situation where I feel like the first little bit is a little bit slow to get into. I'm not overly engaged, and I was actually worried that Wuthering Heights would actually end up being way higher than Agnes Grey, and I've been saying Agnes Grey was my favorite Brontë novel for so long. But really, once we get to the second house, it just takes off, and I just absolutely love it. Of course, it's a very gentle story. If you don't know, it follows Agnes Grey and basically just follows her experience as a governess, but it really develops her very well for such a short book, especially. I know a lot of people don't like Agnes as a character because she can be pretty judgmental, and I definitely saw that a little bit more this time around. However, I feel like she is judgmental in a very, like, relatable way. Just like, I mean, who doesn't when they first meet people and see that they behave in a way that they don't agree with, that you just kind of you notice those things about that person and you're like, ooh, I don't really like that. And I think just because maybe nowadays we're not quite as concerned with the same behaviors as they were back then, and so maybe we see her as more judgmental, whereas today it would just be different things that maybe we would notice and dislike, and of course we think our time's better or whatever, but I mean, there are just pros and cons to every time. Anyway, so that's a completely different tangent, but I do really like Agnes as a character. She is flawed for sure, but that's part of her charm, in my opinion, because obviously you don't want a completely perfect character either. And I think that Agnes Grey provides a really solid, realistic type of person, and so I really appreciate that, and you just end up feeling bad for her in a lot of the situations she ends up in. I also personally really love the romance in Agnes Grey. I think it's the only Brontë novel where I really enjoy the romance, at least as far as feeling like it's a healthy, long-lasting one. I, of course, thrive on Jane and Rochester in Jane Eyre. It's completely unhealthy, but it is just enchanting to read about, to be honest, in my opinion. And even between Cathy and Heathcliff, again, not a healthy romance, but a romance that is still engaging to read about. However, this is the one that I feel like is healthy and engaging to read about. I've heard people complain that we don't know Mr. Weston very well, and I do agree with that, but I think part of the charm of Agnes Grey is that we're seeing it all from her perspective, and it just feels so real. It's such a realistic experience to have this crush and like be constantly worried about it, and maybe there's a little bit of melodrama in the way she behaves towards it towards the end of the story, but overall I just think it's really charming and sweet. And yeah, I don't know what it is about Anne Bronte's writing style, but it just draws me in so much. And yeah, basically I still really love Agnes Grey, and like I said, it and Wuthering Heights could easily be my favorites depending on the day. If I'm more in a sweet spring mood, I'd probably say Agnes Grey, but if I'm more in that gothic rainy day mood, Wuthering Heights would probably be it. Obviously, I have to admit that Wuthering Heights is a better book overall objectively, on a more objective level, but Agnes Grey just has that charm that pulls me in. I just love it. But I could honestly say on another given day, if I'm feeling very like into social justice and criminal justice and stuff like that, I could pick Tenant of Wildfell Hall, because I am absolutely loving this audiobook as well. I am still, for those of you who've read it, I am still in towards the beginning part in the perspective of Gilbert Markham, which it's been fascinating to read this again because I am getting so much more irritated with all of the gossips in the town than I did the first time I read it. I did the first time I read it as well, but this time, because I know the full story and everything that's going on, it just makes it that much more irksome to read about these gossipy and judgmental people that are just assuming the worst based on what little knowledge they have and are just so awful. Recently, I've heard a lot of people talk about not liking Gilbert as a character and being mad at him for making these poor decisions and all this stuff. But it's been interesting to reread it, having those thoughts from other people in the back of my mind, because I totally agree with what they're saying in general. I think Gilbert is making really bad decisions and that he's too easily swayed by his community. But I think the point is that Gilbert is very realistic. Like, he's just a naive boy, really. I mean, he's a very young man, very naive. He's never really moved outside of this community circle. And so the fact that he is easily drawn into these rumors, despite in his mind knowing that he shouldn't believe them, shows that he's just been influenced by his community. But the fact that he has that part of him that's not willing to believe it, that's willing to search out some other explanation, shows that he's breaking away from his community, and that takes a lot. And so the fact that he's taking those steps, in my opinion, is really positive. I, of course, have not gotten to a certain scene where he makes a really bad decision, and so we'll see how I react to that, because I think that's just not good. But yeah, I feel a little more sympathy for Gilbert than I think a lot of other people do. Do I think he makes for a great love interest? Maybe not, but I do feel like for Helen, not only does she seem to have feelings for him, but I also feel like that he represents a very different experience to what she has experienced before, keeping it in very vague terms. And I think that the fact, like I said, that he's willing to break away from his community expectations, from society's expectations, to maybe be a little more considerate of her, even though he's still very naive about it, could be very refreshing for her and could be very good for her and just what she needs. So anyway, we'll see if my opinion changes as I continue. But it has certainly been a delight to listen to both of Anne Bronte's novels right in a row. Continuing with Victorian literature, I am still working through The Moonstone. I have a little over 100 pages left, and I am really, really enjoying it a lot. I just hit a point where a lot of the mystery has unfolded, but it's just created all new questions. And I just, like, I was reading it during my break at work, and I only had a few minutes to read it because I had been doing other things during my break before that. And I just was like so sucked in. I was like, no, I don't have enough time to read as much as I want to, because it was just so, it was so engaging and really frustrating what was happening. I don't want to spoil anything. Maybe if you've read this, you can guess what part I'm at. But there was a lot of frustration in this misunderstanding, and yet, is it a misunderstanding? I don't know. It's very complicated, and I really don't know how this mystery is going to come full circle, because right now it's very confusing. So we will see, but I'm really, really loving it. I'm pretty surprised by how well the characters are developed in this, and it's giving me a lot of hope with Wilkie Collins. This is my second novel I've read from him, and I'm realizing that he's really good at not only writing good mysteries, but writing really solid characters within those mysteries. I think mysteries, especially classic mysteries, often focus more on the mystery itself and the discovery of it. Like, I'm thinking of like Sherlock Holmes, focuses a lot more on that as opposed to really developing the characters in a way that is engaging, and I feel like Wilkie Collins is doing that very well in this book. I know a lot of people complain about him writing very flat female characters, but I actually am really liking Rachel as a character in this, particularly because this book follows multiple different perspectives throughout it. It sort of changes narratives. It's basically someone compiling a bunch of different narratives from different people about this event, and so we're getting multiple perspectives throughout, and because we're getting those multiple perspectives and each one is pretty different, we're able to see Rachel, who doesn't get a narrative, doesn't get a perspective in this book. We're able to see her through a bunch of different eyes, and so I feel like it's making her a much more fleshed out character because we're able to see her through different people's eyes. Some people who don't really like her, some people who really adore her, some people who are servants to her, some people who are in love with her, and just being able to get a better perspective of who she is as a person. So I feel like she's a pretty fleshed out female character on the whole. I mean, she's not necessarily the most interesting female character I've read in Victorian literature or just classic literature before, but she is standing out to me more than I expected her to. So that's been really wonderful. Yeah, absolutely loving this. I'll probably read a few more pages tonight. I was just feeling antsy and very thoughtful, so I needed to, like I said, film this to chat. The last thing I'll just briefly mention is A Rose for the Crown by Anne Easter Smith. I am still not very far. I'm 20 pages in. I've read the first chapter, so not far at all, but I am really enjoying it. It's definitely giving me Sun and Splendor by Sharon K. Penman vibes. It has a very similar feeling to the writing style. And of course it's set in the Wars of the Roses, as was Sun and Splendor, so it has that similar feel of just the atmosphere that goes along with the Wars of the Roses. If you are into the Wars of the Roses, you know what I'm talking about. Every book that is about the Wars of the Roses just has that atmosphere. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just great. And so even though I'm only 20 pages in, I am really enjoying it. I don't know how much I'll get read of this by the end of the month. Just like I said, with moving and stuff. I mean, yes, the 27th on Saturday, I will be moved out as far as all my stuff at my parents', but I'll still have to unpack everything while still working my full-time job. So I'm really not sure how far I'll get into this, especially because I am prioritizing the Moonstone. But I'm just content to read this as long as it takes and just enjoy it, and I think it's gonna be great. And frankly, I think I've decided that whatever I don't finish in the month of August, I'm just going to break up throughout September. I am planning to participate in Becca's Bookopoly-thon in September, which I've never done before. I've always wanted to, but it just hasn't worked out for me in the past, and so I wanted to do that. But if I'm reading this, it might make it tricky unless, like I said, I break it up through the month, which I think will just be the best choice, and then I can read whatever I get on my Bookopoly rolls in addition to working my way through this. So that's probably what I'll end up doing, but in the meantime, we're just gonna enjoy it. What I want for this is at least one night or two where I can just stay up late. I have several hours where I can just snuggle in and just read this for hours and hours. But I also worry that I have lost the ability to focus for that long on reading. Like when I was in high school, I could do that all the time. I would just sit like for a whole day pretty much and just read. Now I just feel like I'm constantly, like I blame social media. I just am constantly thinking of things I need to do, and then, you know, flipping through Instagram and looking at YouTube and looking at my emails a million times, even though I don't need to. Anyway, so we'll see how life goes, and if that ends up happening, that reading night ends up happening before the end of the month or in September. But yes, that's where I'm at. Like I said, I think I'm going to have a little montage of my moving experience if I get the chance. I did buy a new bookshelf because I needed a new one, and so I'm going to be putting that together, so I may film some of that, some of me stocking my bookshelves up. I am very excited, frankly, to do that. I think I'm going to organize it differently from how I have been organizing it recently. Usually I separate my TBR from my read books, but I think I'm just going to combine them now. I think I'll still keep classics and non-classics separate, but I think I'm going to try just combining my TBR and my read. I know what I've read, so I just think it will be kind of fun that way. I don't know, we'll see how it goes, but yes, we're going to stop this huge clip here, and I will take you along with me on my moving journey. Hey guys, so it is now Sunday and I have decided to close out this vlog. I didn't get as much footage of me moving as I had hoped to, but I did get it done. I'm at my parents' house. You'll see my unmade bed because I was focused on unpacking this morning as opposed to making my bed, unfortunately. But I know this vlog is a little bit long because of the clips I have, so I'm just going to end it here. I did want to show off a couple of things. First of all, reading-wise, I didn't get a ton of reading done the past few days, but I did end up finishing The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins and really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Definitely one of those books that was very enjoyable. I don't really have many specific complaints necessarily about it, but it also didn't necessarily grip me as much as like a 5-star read would, or any higher than a 4-star read might. So yeah, solid read. I'm so glad I read it and it kept me very engaged. I felt like the characters, especially for a mystery novel like this, were very well drawn. I liked getting the different perspectives and how that changed your perspective on a lot of these characters. I found that very fascinating. And I felt like the mystery came to a very interesting conclusion. There was one aspect to the conclusion of the mystery that I thought was a little bit strange, but it was still entertaining. It was enjoyable. And I will say, of course, that there is a lot of racial prejudices discussed in this book, as it has a lot to do with Indian culture. There are some Indians involved in the plot, and they are very much treated with less respect than the white characters in the novel are. However, there is a little bit more nuance to the discussion around colonization and even the racial aspects of some of the characters. I think there's some nuanced thoughts that you can have while reading it. So it's not just completely like they're treated like trash, but they're definitely not treated as equals. So definitely go in knowing that. There's also several people who have disabilities, and I don't necessarily feel like they're portrayed in the greatest of lights. Not that necessarily they're treated terribly in the narrative, and I feel like they have some more nuanced personalities than maybe you'd expect. A lot of the time, Victorian authors, when they write about disabled people, these people are either really evil or really good and angelic, and I felt like the characters in this that had disabilities weren't treated that way. I felt like they were treated a little more humanely. However, there is this sense of seeing them as other, which is of course sad to read. So keep those things in mind if those things really bother you, if they trigger you in any way. Those are involved in this book, but it was very entertaining. Glad I read it. Not as good as The Woman in White, in my opinion, but definitely a really solid Victorian mystery. And then, like I said, I haven't really read much else. I haven't really read A Rose for the Crown, like, at all, and I have listened to Agnes Grey a little bit, but not a ton. Not much more to share at this point. But I did, before you go, wanted to show off this lovely thing I just got from my uncle and aunt. So, backstory. My uncle is a lawyer. I don't remember exactly what kind of lawyer. I know he's worked a lot with charities and stuff though, so that's what he does. And he had a client who has a lot of art pieces, a lot of historical art pieces in their collection, and they were just going to get rid of it. A lot of it was representative of the church that we belong to that they used to, but they've kind of become inactive in it, and so they wanted to get rid of those items, but they are really priceless pieces of art. So my uncle said that he would just take them if they were okay with that, and they agreed. So he has all this random art. Not all of it is religious. Some of it is like just landscape portraits and things like that, but he had this little one that is very Victorian looking that he said I could just take. So I wanted to show it off. I have this lovely little, it's all on metal, and you can see this lovely Victorian ladies and gentlemen in the park. Maybe it's early 1900s, I don't know, but either way, it has this lovely frame. Unfortunately, it is broken on that side, but it's just really cool, and just, it's not too big, so it will be easy to keep in my library as I continue on, and I'm really excited about it. It's just kind of a fun Victorian looking piece that's not too much, because I think a lot of Victorian pieces can be overly done. They can be very embellished on the frames and stuff, but I feel like this is just very simple and ornate, but yeah, it won't take over my shelves or anything. So very excited about that. It will be fun if I can get it in a good spot to read near it during Victober. I think that could be really cool. So anyway, that was really fun. But that is all I have to say for this vlog. Let me know down below if you've read any of the books I've mentioned, as I would love to know. I hope you're having a wonderful reading week, and I will see you next time. Bye!